Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. So welcome to the Scrutiny meeting for Oxford City Council on the 4th of November 2024. Just to remind everyone, this is being live streamed on the YouTube channel, but part of the meeting will be exempt later. So we'll be stopping during that portion. And please do use your microphones when speaking. And if you're online, and I know there are a number of you joining that way, please switch the camera on where possible, and then mute when not speaking. Okay, first of all, we're going to take our apologies. Yeah, Celeste, we've got Councillor Kayem, apologies with Councillor Hunt to substitute, so welcome Councillor Hunt. Councillor Stairs sends her apologies, and Councillor Henwood is substituting, so thank you. And Councillor Latif is also absent today, sending his apologies. We're expecting Councillor Rowley, Altaf Khan and Diego Corres, so hopefully they will join us in a moment. Do we have any declarations of interest, please? No. Very good. Then turning to Chair's announcements, the only announcement I have today is that Councillor Malik has informed us that he will be stepping down from the committee and a new member will be confirmed at the next council meeting in November. So just to note that for your records. So then if we can move to item number 4, which is the minutes from the last meeting. Do we have any feedback, questions, amendments to the minutes from the last meeting? No. Everyone happy to approve the minutes? Yeah, I think that's indication of consent. So we approve the minutes of the last meeting of the 8th of October. Just in terms of the structure of today's agenda, it's proposed that because we're going to have a number of exempt items to discuss, we'll take some of the public items first. So the proposal is that we'll take agenda item 8 first, which is the update on the development of the Oxford River Charter, followed by the public part of the leisure update before then moving into confidential session for the remaining items, which we'll come to later. And then the remaining agenda is more administrative and we'll push that to the end if everyone's happy with that. Yeah, okay. In which case then, we are going to start with the update on the development of the Oxford River Charter. And I understand that we've got Mish Tulla online. So Mish, over to you to present the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was asked to provide a sort of brief update to give an overview of the work that's been ongoing with Thames Water for some while, and that includes a number of different areas of the council's activities. So to be clear, this is not just work that's been ongoing within the environmental sustainability team, and I've linked in with many officers from different teams to be able to produce that update. Essentially, we think that the key area of focus for us is the work around the sewage treatment works. All members should now be aware that as a result of capacity constraints at those sewage treatment works, the Environment Agency has now essentially required that expansion there is undertaken before there can be substantive new developments brought forward within the city. Actually, that also impacts on areas outside of Oxford as well, because of the where those works provide their services for extends into South Oxfordshire as well. So the engagement is at the moment is heavily in that space. That investment too, we believe, would also have a significant positive impact in terms of reducing the amount of effluent that is flushed out into the river when the sewage system is maxed out when we get periods of very heavy rainfall. This is something which has been sort of widely publicised. It happens across the country. If we have more capacity at the Thames sewage works, then such events should be less frequent. So there is a read across into the water quality space. But I should also highlight that work on water quality in the Thames has been ongoing for some years now. We've essentially since 2021 through the Oxford Rivers project, we've actually worked with Thames Water. I would characterize rather than against them in terms of the designation of the bathing water space up at Wolvercote Mill Stream, and Thames has actually helped fund some of the work in that area as well, because there's been um, 2 years in a row now the water quality there has been designated poor as a result of the Environment Agency monitoring, which is still ongoing. It is conducting much more detailed investigation into what the sources of pollutants are. So this is, and I was able to check in just this morning with colleagues, but it's still not yet been published by the Environment Agency. But it should provide a really detailed understanding once that study is completed as to where are these pollutants coming from. We know that that stretch of the river remains polluted. Sewage flooding is another issue which we have been working on with Thames. The sewage flooding is essentially really quite horrible, is where locally the sewage system is overloaded, and you get kind of it backing up. And what we're seeing is occasionally it comes into properties. More regularly, it seeps up into gardens, and this is in some distinct parts of the city where we've seen this, and unfortunately on a sustained regular basis. So one of those areas is Campbell Road near Florence Park, and there Thames Water has been working with us funding the deployment of water butts. Water butts catch runoff water, they reduce hence the pressure on the sewage system at a very localized level during periods of heavy rainfall, and so reduce the prospect that you get this sort of sewage flooding. But this is not the only part of the city where this happens, and hence not the only area where we want to deploy such measures. We're also doing something with the school down in Hinksey Park as well. And officers are also looking at Headington with around the Lye Valley SSSI there for similar purposes to help protect it. Water supplies are occasionally a topic of discussion with the Environment Agency. With Thames Water. It publishes periodic sort of plans in terms of its infrastructure, and we engage with Thames Water through our local plan process around what their expectations were for infrastructure delivery, so we can try and be as aligned as possible. So that there was a lot of engagement with Thames Water last year in the sort of run up to the production of our draft local plan, and they work to understand what our emerging site allocations are in the plan, and how they will sort of provide water supplies as well as wastewater for it. And so turning last to the Oxford City River Action Plan, and officers, we're cognizant of the council motion on this, but I should be clear that we haven't undertaken any work to develop that action plan, and that is essentially pending the sort of the ongoing work to deliver the Oxford sewage treatment works, since there is a direct read across to the water quality issue in the Thames But further, we do need to understand what that Environment Agency research says as to the sources of pollutants in the river, because it'd be rather difficult to actually develop a proper action plan, for example, that might look at some of the farming practices around the river until we have a better understanding about what the sources of pollution are. So I think with that, Chair, I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Mish. I'd like to ask at the floor whether there are any specific questions you'd like to ask. Yeah, I've got one, Councillor Ottino, I've got Councillor Jarvis. Any further questions at this stage? And I've got one for myself. So maybe we ask 3 questions and then pass them back to you, Mish, after that. So Councillor Ottino, first of all, please.
Yeah, are we absolutely clear where our responsibilities lie, where Thames Water's responsibilities lie, and maybe the Environment Agency's responsibilities lie when we've got sort of brooks at the sides of our parks, gutters that might not have been cleaned out very often? All of these things not being maintained often contribute to flooding in different parts of the city. Are we absolutely clear what we're supposed to be doing, and clear that when it's not our responsibility, the other organisation is doing it when we request them, so that, like, if it's a problem in the area for members, they know who to contact to get things done? Thank you. And Councillor Jarvis, please.
Thank you. Yeah, relatively straightforward one, I think. So obviously in the the paper you make reference to the Q&A meeting that happened with Thames Water last year. I guess it's just a question really about that, because if I recall correctly, in that meeting there was a suggestion that there would be regularly held meetings between all members and Thames Water. Well, rather we would request that Thames Water would agree to hold regular meetings. And I think I found that meeting incredibly useful in order to be able to put residents' concerns, of which there were many, to Thames Water. However, it felt very much like a starting point, and I think it would be very useful to continue that conversation at a member level as well as at an officer level. So I guess the question really is, has there been any attempt thus far made to pin Thames Water down for further Q&A sessions like that, where we continue to have that ongoing conversation with Thames Water at a sort of ward and member level going forward?
Thank you. And we've got Councillor Hunt as well. So, oh, yeah, please go ahead, Councillor Hunt. We'll take that now.
Thank you. My question really was just, I probably should know this, but this report updates the Scrutiny Committee on the Council's engagement with Thames Water development of Oxford River Action Plan. So what was the previous document that this is now updating? And was it pre-2016? Because what we do know is that the rivers and the waterways have become collateral for Brexit. And obviously this is a sort of apolitical document in many ways, but not to talk about the deregulation that's come with Brexit, I feel is problematic.
Okay, so thank you. So 3 questions there. So one around, are we clear on our responsibilities between Thames Water, ourselves and the Environment Agency? The Q&A meeting about have there been attempts to pin them down for future ones because they're useful, and what is the reference point for sort of the work on Thames Water and with respect to the deregulation of water companies? Thank you. Over to you, Mish.
Right. Well, on the first one about responsibility, well, if it's kind of running water like brooks and ditches and the like, then it isn't going to be anything to do with Thames Water. It is going to be the landowner, which is often us, but it isn't necessarily always us, because there's many landowners, as we know, across city, and the Environment Agency does have some role as well. I think in terms of the kind of the law around riparian ownership and responsibilities isn't as clear as it might be, and so I think in that sense, it's a good question, because it isn't always immediately clear whose responsibility it is to, for example, improve some of the watercourses so that there is a reduced risk of flooding potentially. Having said that, of course, the Oxford Flood Alleviation Scheme, which is clearly managed by the Environment Agency, when it is introduced, will have the impact of protecting a good chunk of the city from fluvial flooding. I think that the reference to gutters, which is more to do with the risk clearly of surface water flooding and runoff and flash flooding, and I'm sure everybody has seen the just appalling images that have been sort of playing from Spain, from Valencia there. I think that gives a sense of just how severe flash flooding can be. I think in those circumstances, and we saw a bit of it a couple of months ago in Oxford, where we had some, or in Oxfordshire, slightly more widely than just the city, we had some serious flash flooding incidents. There's only so much that can be done about that. So yes, we do maintain culverts and gutters along roadsides on behalf of the Highways Authority, but in the end, there's only limited things that can be done when you get very extreme levels of rainfall coming in. Turning to the question about the Q&A session with Thames Water, yes, that was yeah, that's absolutely right. There was a commitment to an ongoing dialogue. In truth, that dialogue at the moment is very, very focused around this Thames sewage treatment works, and the upgrading of those works. There's also, as I'm sure members are well aware, been some changes in the Thames Water leadership, not least new chief executive, pretty new still. He joined 2-3 months ago. And the level of engagement that we've had from him has been, frankly, a lot better than with the previous leadership there. So there have been meetings involving senior government officials, the chief executive of Thames Water, senior officials from the City Council, and then also from the Environment Agency, from Ofwat and others around this sewage treatment works matter. So we haven't actually, no, we haven't been sort of pressing on the kind of the wider point about sort of wider discussions with ward members, because that has been the focus. But it's a point not lost, which I think certainly there will be and should be opportunity for holding sort of further discussion. But I think it would be appropriate to ensure that there was, as much updating and briefing as possible of all these different matters before we went into such a further Q&A session. And perhaps on that point, turning to the last question, I mean, the purpose of this document, it's just a short, I appreciate just a short sort of 2 or 3 page briefing note, was to provide an update at the request of the Scrutiny Chair. So this updates in particular on the issue of the River Action Plan, which had been requested by council through a motion. And so, I mean, in a sense, serves to explain or try to explain why we haven't started work on that yet, because of these various other work streams that are ongoing. It certainly, we've had a number of updates that have been provided to members, certainly since 2016, on a range of different sort of factors. But this is really just a kind of a cant around the different sort of areas of discussion with Thames Water themselves, which we're trying to update on, and which there will need to be further updates on as those various discussions progress.
Thank you, Mish. Have we got any other questions from anyone else? Yes, Councillor Henwood, and then I'll put my questions as well. Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So my question is linked to road runoff water. I think that's one of the things that the City Council could be accountable for. So we noticed that in Hayford Hill Lane, there's an awful lot of runoff coming from the bypass directly into the river. Is that something that we could look at and mitigate in the future? As that ought to be one of our responsibilities, would it not?
Thank you. Okay, any further ones? So in which case then just a few questions from my side. Just in terms of the Oxford River Charter, one of the actions from the motion in July was to do a gap analysis against the local river charter, which has 6 actions set out. I think it's from River Action UK, the campaign group. And on that, I think what would be good to see is just an overview of what we're doing related to each of these 6 actions and where there are gaps. I think we're probably doing a lot of what they set out in that. And then that gap analysis could potentially be used for any future Oxford River Charter. But I understand it's not a priority to do this at this stage because of the sewage works, but is that something that could be done? It's more of a quick and dirty exercise, as it were, just to get a checklist against those actions. So that would be the first thing. So is that going to be feasible to do that gap analysis at some point, bearing in mind these other priorities? The second point relates to domestic misconnections. When we had a meeting here of, there was a debate in the town hall about river pollution, this came up, and that we as a city council apparently are responsible for enforcement of domestic misconnections where the property owners have connected the dishwasher or the washing machine or the toilet to the wrong place, basically, and so then dirty water is mixing with fresh water. So I wonder how the council is ensuring the enforcement of misconnections in its own housing stock and those that it regulates through either HMO or selective licensing regimes, and also how is it enforcing this in housing association properties. So that's another question. And then finally, it's been suggested that there are that we could use our influence and convening platform as a council to convene various stakeholders to talk about and understand the impacts on their lives of some of the issues related to Thames Water. So what format would you recommend that this kind of convening or briefing or platform take as a multi-stakeholder initiative? And I understand that Councillor Railton's also on the line, so she may have some views on this as well. Thank you, Mish, over to you.
Okay. So on the first of those around runoff from the roads, short of double checking with the council law officers, I would be pretty confident in suggesting that that must be a responsibility of the Highways Authority, not City Council. So I'd be pretty surprised if we could be held responsible for runoff from any road. In respect of there was talk about some particular works on Hayford Lane. I mean, I wouldn't know, but I can raise that as a particular. So perhaps if Councillor Hemwood, you could just provide me with a bit more details, I'll be happy to go and sort of look into it. But as I say, I think on the more general point, whilst we seek to keep drains and gutters and so forth clear, there will be certain levels of volume of water which is not going to be possible to do anything about. As I say, I think it's the evidence is clear from a number of different locations. On the River Charter gap analysis, well, I'm grateful, Chair, if there is a way of short-circuiting and your initial view is that we're already doing a number of these things, then that is certainly helpful. And yeah, of course would be, when we get to the point that we can start the work on the around the River Charter, then that would be a useful tool clearly to look at that. And on the last one, in terms of convening sorry, you also are the domestic misconnections. This I don't know anything about at all. So I would have to go, and I was not aware that we were responsible for enforcement around this. I'm not sure how we would know that anyone had done such a thing. I would have thought Thames would enforce themselves, but I mean, I can go away and investigate. We have other housing enforcement officers, obviously, but whether or not this is something that they are routinely doing, I apologise, I just don't know. But on the last, the convening a platform in relation to the kind of the wider sort of issues that we sort of collectively have on all things water. That's something which we'd want to give some thought to. So I'm not sure I've got a quick answer for you.
Thank you. I understand that we've also got Councillor Chapman with his hand, a virtual hand raised. So maybe there's something to add, but thanks, Mish, for that feedback. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me okay. Just to really give corollary to what Mish said about the bypass and the water thing. I mean, in the past, we had a role in maintaining the major arterial roads in Oxford under the Section 42 agreement, but that went away about 3 or 4 years ago now. So we have no role whatsoever in the maintenance of the main roads coming into Oxford. So the Woodstocks, the Banburys, all the big roads. So again, I would be very surprised if we had any role in relation to flooding on those roads. But I can't see how we would have, because we've just got no stake or status in the way they're maintained at all at the moment. That was the county council decision to put that contract out to tender, and I think it's now Milestone who do a lot of that work. You see their signs around Oxford a lot. We're still working on the minor roads on behalf of the county, but the major roads are not our responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. Okay, unless we've got any further questions, then we will. Yes, please. Please go ahead.
I'd like to know where the runoff from roads.
Could you please? Yeah, thank you.
I would like to know where the runoff from roads actually goes.
So this is a general question from, I don't know, Mish,
Yeah.
whether you're
I mean, generally speaking, it'll go into the sewage network. So it'll enter the sewers that were built under the city, dating all the way back to Victorian period. There is an upgrading of sewage pipes in some parts of the city by Thames Water. There's various points at which and I wouldn't know the detail of where the sewer becomes the property of Thames Water rather than the property of the Highways Authority. And I wouldn't know exactly where. In the same way as that, if you have blockages in your sewer when it's on your own property, on your own land, it's yours. It's not. It doesn't belong to Thames Water. So there are some equivalents, I believe, in that respect. Yeah, as I say, I can look if there is a particular issue that we can then pass on to the county council, then be happy to do so.
Thank you very much, Mish. I think we've got Councillor Railton's got her hand raised on a line. So if we could go to you, please. Thank you.
I mean, I think, yeah, Mish has already really said it, but yeah, for the most part, it's going to end up in the sewers. I guess, where road runoff can directly get into watercourses, then, I mean, I think this is a sort of there's an increasing understanding about the amount of pollution that does come from road runoff, mainly like petrol, tire particulates and like brake particulates, and that just ending up straight in the river. And yeah, I think this is very much an unsolved problem, really, and a problem that people don't really got to grips with yet. But yes, I mean, most of it will end up in the sewers though, because that's where most of the road runoff goes to.
Thank you very much. So at this point, I'll just open up the debate for the panel. Based on what we've heard, have you got any recommendations that you would like to put forward to officers related to this topic around either Thames Water or more broadly around water quality in Oxford that we've just touched on in these discussion items? So issues around whether we need to write a letter around riparian ownership and the law on that, stormwater investments, proposal for a meeting with Thames Water. Yes, I'm seeing some nods on that one. Okay, go ahead, please, Councillor Jarvis.
You've summarised my proposal, which is that we request another meeting with Thames Water that members can attend to put forward residents' concerns about water issues in the city.
Thank you very much. Just on this point, and then we'll come to Jemima, do people support that recommendation that was put by Councillor Jarvis? Thank you. Is that noted, Celeste? Yeah, is that okay? Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
I mean, just following on that, do you think there should be terms attached to why we want to meet Thames Water rather than it just being another open call for a meeting? That actually, given the, you know, given that we have now monitored the water and found X, Y, and Z, I mean, I just think we need to go a bit harder on what we're actually asking for. And secondly, do we have a recommendation to meet with our MPs to discuss this? Is this something that, because essentially this is about legislation ultimately. You know, these are the behind the scenes, the emails that we're all writing as councillors endlessly to our MPs. So it would join the dots.
Thank you. Some points on both of those points, but as anyone else? Yeah, Councillor Mundy.
So a lot's been made of the financial problems that Thames Water are going through. It's been suggested that they could even go under, as it were, not excuse the pun, but does this council need to have a strategy to deal with the potential of Thames Water no longer being a going concern, and obviously, you know, potentially either being taken over by the government or an alternative company coming up? You know, have we strategized for these sorts of outcomes?
So I think on that point, we might have to just seek clarification from Mish on that in a moment. Yeah, we'll do that in a second. It's fine. On the earlier point around the meetings, I think what we've just heard is a potential scope for two different kinds of meetings, or one meeting which is more structured. So do we want to, in the recommendation as proposed by Councillor Jarvis, state that we wish to create a structure, or we request the officers to put forward a structured proposal to us of the format for this meeting? And do we want to do that as a separate event from any engagement with the MPs, or is it additional separate? Yeah, separate. Okay, so the proposal then for the meeting with Thames Water, the recommendation is, as Councillor Jarvis previously put it, but with the call for officers to provide a structured proposal for those or to support members with structuring the discussions for that meeting. Does everyone agree with that? Yeah. No.
It's a broader issue than just Thames Water. I think road runoff is also an element that wouldn't be Thames Water. I think it's a broader issue, and obviously Thames Water deals with the outcome of our waste, but I think it is a broader issue where you've got other factors like road runoff that have an influence on the capacity of the sewage system. So the environment report, do we know when that will come out? That will identify the toxins and pollutants in the river? Do we know when that's going to be published?
We can clarify that question from Mish. So we've got two clarifications from Mish in a moment. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so then are we then talking about, then in addition to this member engagement with Thames Water, since we suggested that we want to have a broader discussion, which is a little bit beyond just Thames Water, but also involves the MPs, should this be a multi-stakeholder kind of convening, maybe not like lots and lots of people, but just some, again, a structured dialogue on a broader range of issues with a range of stakeholders to do with water quality and
I think the meeting that we would like to request with MPs is to specifically discuss the future of our water, using some wording from this action plan and so on. What we're trying to do is focus their minds and actually now raise this as a priority, a matter of urgency, given that there's so many factors involved in, the safety and health of our water.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. And I think to Councillor Henwood's earlier point, there are a range of stakeholders that are involved that need to be at that table. So should we potentially put forward a recommendation to officers that they come to us with a proposal of what that multi-stakeholder event with the MPs might look like, to have a multi-stakeholder discussion on the waterways, and this could be used as an input to inform the Oxford water action plan, river action charter in due course. Would that work as a proposal? And in terms of timing, we'll get the clarification in terms of the pollutants, but that clearly has got something to play into it. So at this point, we've got 2 recommendations formally. Just on the point about enforcement of misconnections, I don't know whether it needs to be an actual recommendation as such, but more of an action for officers to go away and look at the implications of that. Would that be a recommendation or suggestion? Please, Councillor
I
Atini.
mean, wouldn't that be something that building control will do when something's been built in the first place? You'd have that. You think that would be one of the things they might check on?
So just on personal experience, when there was a misconnection down in Aston's Ayot, the whole of the neighbourhood where I live was being tested, but it was on a voluntary basis. So there was no obligation for some of the licensed properties, rented properties, to participate in the testing to see whether they had misconnections. The misconnection was coming from them. So I do wonder whether there's a piece of research that needs to be looked at about what actions could be taken to address any misconnections, because if that clearly is our responsibility as a city council, that is something that we can do through our powers. So perhaps we should have a greater clarity around what could be done, even if it's not being done already, or what is being done related to that. Any thoughts on that? I see some nods of heads. Anyone like to, Councillor Atini?
It would be how it would be paid for, I guess, because it sounds like it would be quite an expensive thing for the council to do. So, and if I suppose we could require landlords maybe as part of the licensing thing, possibly to pay for. They'd have to pay for that, though, wouldn't they? Be difficult to make everybody pay for such a thing, and we probably wouldn't be able to afford to do it ourselves, I imagine.
I think on this, what I would suggest that we're not looking at that step at this stage. We're just looking at what the council is already doing on this, what good practice it is maybe around the country from other councils in managing misconnections through their housing stock, rather than imposing any kind of cost on anyone at this stage. But clearly there is a problem. Apparently misconnections do comprise quite a significant number of sewage or some issues with the waterways. So it is something, if we don't know what we're doing at the moment, we should clearly know a bit more about what our obligation is on this. So maybe it's a recommendation around just a bit of research by officers to understand what our obligations are and what actions could be taken by the council to ensure that these misconnections don't exist in properties that we have control or influence over. Is that okay for wording? I'm seeing nods of heads. The majority. Simon are you okay with that? Okay. So in which case then, please, Councillor.
I just had a question for Anna. Is there enough reference to testing in this? As regards the Environment Agency, I mean, every aspect of Water One now queries, and Mish brought up the need for, I think he said, more testing or more understanding of what's in our water. So I'm talking across the board, from the water we're drinking, when one runs a tap, to what's in our rivers, which are now brown when they weren't brown 5 years ago. I really think we do just need to have, again, some understanding of how we can push for testing? I know we've been trying to test Hinksey Lake for the last 6 months. What do you think, Anna?
So just to just to check my understanding here, is this a request for like testing to be in this like river charter? I'm not sure where you want to include the ask for testing.
Councillor Hunt, just a clarification from your side.
Do you not think we should ask for testing? It just seems to me that in a document where we're talking about water quality, not to actually ask for testing seems to be an oversight, because what are we talking about? We don't understand what's in our water unless we know, as you as a scientist, what are we talking about, the specifics?
Okay, so just on this, and this is, I guess, a piece of pre-work that would inform any future Oxford, charter. Anna, any feedback on that point? Whether we need to do some research to understand what more could be done on river water testing to inform any future action plan that we take as a city council? Thank you.
Okay, so I might have to defer to Mish, but so certainly, there has been longitudinal testing done at Wolvercote as part of the bathing water status. Like any testing that you do would have to be longitudinal in time. It's not, you can't just do like a one-time thing. You would have to do it over months and months in different conditions for it to be basically worth anything, because the weather, how much it rains, all sorts of stuff affects water quality. I mean, we've seen this in Hinksey Lake when this report finally comes out. But I mean, we can certainly, I mean, this is the thing, we can ask all we want, but we won't necessarily get right, whether from the Environment Agency or from Thames Water themselves. Certainly citizen science that's being done by certainly, the sort of Save the Windrush campaign and things have been, they do actually have a fairly good bank of data about what's going on upstream, but systematic testing downstream, I'm not sure. Do you know, Mitch?
Yes, so this is essentially the detailed study that the Environment Agency is undertaking. So one of the benefits of the bathing water status, which remember is granted by DEFRA, is their requirement that EA undertakes very regular testing of water. They've been doing that, as you said, Councillor, on a longitudinal basis. So there's now several years worth of data. But what they're looking at in detail is to try and identify what is the source of these pollutants, and that so our citizen science colleagues have highlighted and they've identified pollutants, but only scientists at the Environment Agency are going to be able to match the actual detailed sort of DNA, if you like, of where the pollution's arising. So that's what we're waiting on. And in response to Councillor Henwood's query, we actually thought we were going to get this report earlier this year. So it's now already over 6 months beyond the point that I thought I was going to be seeing it. So my understanding is that, as soon as it's ready, and it could be ready any time soon now, we will be shared a copy of this, because we are, in a sense, it is our designation or request around the designation of that bathing water area. So we should have that information, and that information, I think, would then usefully inform all sorts of bits of follow-up work about what you then do to enhance water quality in the rivers. In terms of drinking water, Councillor Hunt, that is overseen by the Drinking Water Inspectorate. That definitely isn't us. There's a statutory body that does that. We don't do that.
Thank you very much, Mish. And there was another question from Councillor Mundy clarifying the situation. What happens?
Oh, yes. Yeah, yes. So if Thames Water goes bust, then there are arrangements in place overseen by DEFRA and Ofwat to transfer its operations to others. I think on the basis of what government has been saying, I think it's their clear intention than rather go transfer it on to some other private operator. It would come back into government, and so our assumption. I mean, you asked about it from in a sense from a from a kind of emergency planning perspective, there shouldn't be any such emergency issue or continuity issue, because the operation should just smoothly continue. So even if the corporate entity goes bust, the operations will continue to run, as I say, somewhere between DEFRA and Ofwat.
Yeah, all good. Thank you very much, Mish. That's very helpful. Okay, so at this point, any further recommendations or points to note? Everyone seems happy. I do think on the stormwater point, given the flash floods that we've seen in Spain and just the human devastation that has been caused by it, it might be worth us just noting from Scrutiny our concerns around, investments in stormwater runoff and gutter clearances. There's no concrete recommendation there, but I think that we need to think of this as a climate emergency related item in terms of disaster planning and thinking about how we're planning for that as a city council, because that would have a cost for us if there were flash floods, and someone ends up paying, and it probably will be us. So do people agree that we can maybe put a note to that effect to support this? Yeah, thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else on that, I'd like to thank both Mish and also Councillor Railton for joining us today and for your briefing, really helpful. And we look forward to working on some of these recommendations subject to their approval. Thank you for your time. Okay, so then we move on to the next item, which is item number 8, the leisure update. There is an exempt appendix on this. I'm going to just remind you all when we have this discussion not to refer to that. We're going to invite Chi Mukonge, Councillor Mukonge, Cabinet Member for Healthy Oxford, to speak to us and introduce the report. And I understand, have we got Hagan on the line as well? Hello, Hagan, nice to see you. And we've got James Bowen as well for the Leisure and Active Wellbeing Manager. So thank you very much. So please, over to Chi for introducing the report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You may remember in January 2024, when we had a meeting to approve the award of the contract to More Leisure, you did ask us to be updating you, and that's what we are doing now. The report in front of you explains the journey from that time to where we are now. It talks about the demobilization, the mobilization, the lessons learned, what we are doing to effectively manage the contract, and the quick wins. I must reiterate that it was difficult when we were awarding the contract. There was a backlash, but we have had good feedback from users. Actually, if you have been to one of our swimming pools or the gym, you could see actually the new gym equipment and the work are ongoing. The report goes further to actually explain what we are doing to effectively manage the contract. The meetings that we're having with More Leisure, the monthly meeting that I have with our officers, I must say, and I can say it, this is one of the successful contracts that I have seen. One, we didn't close any of our leisure centers. Two, we still kept on our concessionary, and you can read further into this report other good things that we are doing, both More Leisure and the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does Hagen, would you like to add anything to the words of Chi?
Thanks so much, Chair. Just wanted to really say that we've worked really hard and effectively and efficiently with More Leisure. We've worked in a partnership orientated way. However, we are very clear about obviously what needs to be delivered under the contract as well. So that's very clear, obviously, in our minds going forward. That there have been some very quick wins, which we're really pleased about. But of course, more work to be done, and we'll continue obviously on in that vein going forward in a way which is partner orientated, but with the backdrop of the contract. You know, we've had lessons learned obviously through the work that we've had with the previous incumbent. They've been applied going forward, obviously, so that we can take things forward, maybe in a slightly different way around the governance, which you'll see in relation to how we have, ensured that we have some technical expertise from property services within the client team, and it's a whole council response in relation to that as well, and the framework around making sure that we have the right meetings in place at the right times within the right centres is also really key to making sure that it's an effective contract going forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. So have we got any questions from the panel? This is with exception to the confidential items appendix. Councillor Ottino, please, and then Councillor Hunt. Thank you.
I mean, the report looks like there's been lots of quick wins, like you said, and it mentions lessons for future handovers of contracts, but it's hard to believe everything's gone brilliantly. So can you fill us in on some things that maybe haven't got, that you're pressing the new contractor to sort of change? There must be something.
Thank you, Councillor Ottino. We'll take Councillor Hunt's question now, and then you can take them together. Please go ahead.
Mine was, on the back of Simon's. So I'm a regular user of the Barton pool, and it was just a couple of comments specifically about really the fabric of, I'd say, besides the gym, which is fabulous, there's definitely signs that things are not being well managed in terms of details just around changing rooms and so on. It actually looks rather shabby, I would say, since the new provider's taken over. Secondly, it would just be great to get some sort of wordage in here about the Lido, which is such a huge asset in Oxford and is so under actually resourced and supported. And something that we talked about a lot internally was how to turn it into a year-round Lido, which is what they're doing across the UK. Given that we've got a water source heat pump, given that we've got huge demand for year-round outdoor swimming, to really try and find a way to work with our new provider to focus on it and turn it into a stunning asset here in Oxford. I think that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So the question about what's not gone quite so well, the fabric of the building in Barton, the changing rooms, and can we make the Lido an asset that we can use all year round? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chair. So I think in relation to improvements, there also, there are always some elements of improvements, and yes, whilst we've got some brilliant examples now of improvements in facilities, changing rooms is something which is still on our improvement roadmap. So you could say sort of changing rooms at Barton, but I would also say at Ferry and also at the ice rink. So we are sort of working through plans around what can we try and do as a partner orientated way with the leisure investment project. But also, is there any additional external funding that we could try and bring to the table? So we're talking to Sport England in relation to lots of different elements which might sort of join up some of those improvements across the piece. And yeah, there definitely have been individual circumstances. So we would say where improvements needed to be made were some elements of data. So in effect, we know that customers have gone into centres and their membership hasn't been quite right. So there's been, I suppose, some elements of just making sure that this might be a bit of a legacy from the previous incumbent, but actually, it's taken a little bit of time to get some of those elements right and to the satisfaction of customers. So those things are certainly feeding through. I don't know, James, if there's anything else that I've missed that you might want to sort of bring forward on the improvement side.
Yeah, I guess just a couple of things, particularly on kind of Barton facilities. So I think it's worth remembering that the previous operator, there were some items that they didn't get to in terms of looking after the facilities to the standard they should have done. So we're all aware of that, and there's a reasonable budget to bring the facilities up to the standard where they really need to be. So I think, yeah, we need to bear in mind over the next probably 18 months or so, maybe a little bit longer, there will be a program of works taking place, some of that sort of behind the scenes to kind of put things right. So for instance, at Barton, looking at the kind of ventilation system, that's part of the reason the changing rooms aren't looking their best. But I think they are valid points, and as Hagan said, ferry and the ice rink as well are definitely on the list. Other things that I think could be sort of strengthened is while recruitment on the whole has actually been really good, and particularly it's worth highlighting more put on lifeguard courses before they even started the contract, so that they could, we're starting from a good position, because actually they started from a very relatively low staffing base. We are still awaiting the recruit or the appointment of an active communities post. So that would be a kind of community development role, which we see as being quite a key role. So we are waiting to fill that. Granted, they have done interviews, but that they haven't found the right candidate so far. But they are trying. But I think that's something that we are waiting on.
And just picking up the Hinksey Pool comments as well from Councillor Hunt. So yes, yeah, we are talking to more about lots of different options around improvements at Hinksey. We know that there's an excellent customer user group there who do some fantastic work, and obviously conversations with more will centre around what's the business case in relation to this. So if there's a way to do it then aligned to a business case, and obviously we need to present that, and obviously any necessary funding which might come with that. But yeah, we recognise that there are some good work across the country in relation to Lidos. We're constantly sort of touching in with other providers to try and glean any sort of snippets of good information or items that we could try and use towards the Lido. But it's certainly something which within Oxford we should be really proud of. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Hagan. And I know that, Councillor McCongay, please, you have what's coming.
Yeah, just to add on that, Jemima, probably you agree with me that this time around, INCSEP full opened on time, and there was a lot of work done behind the doors. For example, More Leisure went up and above to recruit while we are still negotiating the contract. So yeah, it was a very good opening. And I talked to Egan just this afternoon for the fact that we should have conversation that it is opened on time next year around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on this? Okay, so at this point then, let's open for discussion. I kind of hear a recommendation forming from Councillor Hunt's proposal, which is that there is a recommendation that officers explore that the Lido is opened all year round, and explore a business case for doing that. So that looks like a potential recommendation we could work with if anyone has any thoughts about that point. I'm seeing a couple of nods of heads, but just anyone want to respond to that, please? Yeah, Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, no, I would, support that. I think that's, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? I'm seeing again nods of heads. Yeah, I've seen some great Lidos around the place that we can learn from, like Reading as well, for instance. They've got a successful model there. So if we could have a recommendation, please, that officers explore business case for opening the Lido for all year round to support open water, cold water swimming, and presumably.
Also, it doesn't need to be cold water because we have this air source heat pump. That's the water source heat pump that's pumping heat out of the lake. So that's what we've already got. So we should be utilising that.
Thank you.
Sustainable. Yeah.
Do you have the text for that? Yeah. Any comments on that proposal, that recommendation? All okay? Any other points? Is it for the other topics that were raised? Are these points that we want to just note as topics that we've questioned on, please, Councillor?
I thought an important word to get in there is ventilation, because actually this is something that we know, given COVID and given air quality, is something that's very important to now be pushing for in all of our sports facilities and pools.
So thank you. On that ventilation point, Councillor Hunt, would you like to see that as a recommendation put forward that priority is given to ensuring that ventilation is part of any retrofitting renovations of changing rooms and facilities? Okay, thank you. Any comments on that recommendation? Anyone disagree with it? No. Okay, so if we could have a recommendation related to the ensuring that during the retrofit renovation of the changing facilities that ventilation is addressed for health purposes. Thank you. Okay, so at this point, we may have some items that require us to go into closed session because we have a confidential appendix. So I believe that I have to, at this point, unless there are any final points to rate on this, no final points, then I need to pass a resolution to exclude the press and public from discussion pursuant to paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Do you all agree? Yes. That is, everyone's agreed. Yes. Okay, in which case can we switch off the live stream? Thank you.